Oregon picks up a new recruit with legendary genes.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view if you're watching on YouTube every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Oregon's tight ends in 2026. Could they be used even more this year? I'm going to explore that question. Difficult one to answer in a certain sense. And the hype train for some folks on Oregon next year is taking off. It's left the tracks. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. And if you thought I was going to pass on the opportunity to rep my Seahawks here on the show, you're so incredibly wrong. Anyway, I'm just trying to give you hope that I'm not entirely cursed and good things can happen to the teams I root for, because Oregon, of course, is one of them. And boy, it's felt a little cursed in postseason settings the last couple of years. But perhaps that will change. Sam Ngata commits as the second Oregon player in the class of 2027. There are only two guys. How many will Oregon take? That's probably a February question here on the show. But he is the son of Haloti Ngata, who is unquestionably, I don't think you could ask anyone who knows any amount of, or let me rephrase that. I don't think you can ask anyone who knows a solid amount about Oregon football and its history who would tell you anything besides Haloti Ngata is one of the best players in the history of Oregon football. If you made an all-decade defense at the time, Haloti Ngata would have been on it. If you made an all-century defense, Haloti Ngata would be on it. If you made a best pro career all time for the Ducks, Haloti Ngata would be on it. If you made best Duck defense of all time, Haloti Ngata would be on it. So Sam has got some fantastic genes. Now, he is not as highly regarded of a recruit as his dad was. Haloti, by the way, class of 2002, to this day is the fourth highest rated Oregon recruit of all time. Can you tell me who the other three are? Little reverse trivia here. I'm going to leave that out there. Honor system. Don't look it up. Come on now. Who are the three recruits that are rated higher all time in Oregon history that have committed to the Ducks? Hint, one of them is on the roster right now. But Sam Ngata, outside linebacker / tight end. He plays both for Olympus High School, which is in the Salt Lake City area. He's the number 586 player nationally, a composite 3-star recruit, number 48 linebacker, number 7 player overall in the state of Utah. So I think this is one that makes a bigger splash in the hearts and minds of Oregon fans because of who his father is compared to what his recruiting profile is. But we've also seen highly rated guys not work out, or at least not make an impact right away. And we've seen not as highly rated guys become multi-year starters. I think there are a couple examples of players in the second category. The one I always go to is Marcus Harper. I think Marcus Harper was rated, let's see. We can look up this information really quickly. Marcus Harper was coming out of high school in the class of 2020, the number 714 overall player. 714th. His composite score was slightly lower than Sam Ngata's, and Harper turned into a multi-year starter at guard and was a darn good one as well. So I don't think, I could come on here and tell you, oh man, he's under-recruited. He's underrated. He doesn't have the buzz. Utah is a burgeoning state for high school football talent. I don't think there's been a lack of scouting or that he's been wildly overlooked. I mean, anyone you could argue is, rated a little bit lower than they could be relative to their potential. He's 6'3.5", 215 pounds, according to 24/7. Interestingly enough, the ESPN article on the matter, which was, I think, only written because Haloti Ngata is his father, said he's 6'5", 210 pounds. Now, that's different, 6'5", 210 is Kingston Lopa territory. 6'3.5", 215 is put on 20 pounds and become bigger Bryce Betcher. By the way, what was he rated coming out of high school? Not particularly high. But the other schools that were heaviest after him, you had BYU, Cal. This is I didn't even think about this until I'm recording this segment. This would be the first instance of a recruit picking Dan Lanning over Tosh Lupoi. Now, the legacy component there has to play a pretty solid factor, but he's just the second player in the class of 2027, along with four-star edge Cam Pritchett, who's a much higher-rated guy. I would guess, just off the top of my head, Oregon takes 20 plus or minus 3 players in this 2027 cycle. I think it's just kind of where things have gotten. Maybe with all the departures from this last year's team and that exodus that took place, maybe that number ticks up closer to the 25-27 range. We'll just have to wait and see. There is also a prediction from Rivals for Oregon to land 4-star wide receiver Dakota Gurant, Guerrant. He's a top 50 player in the 24/7 composite ranking. So that's a name to watch as the week goes along. But, Ngata on film, I again, as I mentioned, don't think that this is necessarily a situation of where I watch his tape and go, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is rated so low. No, I mean, he looks like usually the best player on the field when he plays. Utah, again, growing state for high school football, but it's not at the same level of a California, a Texas, a Florida. I think it's kind of close to Washington right now, which is a good state for it. I think Arizona is probably a touch above those two states for high school talent as well. So I think that probably factors into his ranking a little bit. And, he's listed actually as an outside linebacker, OLB. And typically when you see that positional designation, you think of a guy like Mateo Uiagalelei, who, if Ngata is as tall as the ESPN article says, 6'5", well, that's how tall Mateo is, but Mateo's got 60 pounds on Sam Ngata. But when you watch his highlight reel, he's playing mostly at the second level. And I don't know that he's got the high-end speed to drop some weight and go back and play safety. But it's kind of interesting schematically when you look at where he lines up. He lines up a lot as an off-ball linebacker, but he kind of lines up way away from the other linebackers in the defensive formation. I think that's a testament to his versatility, but he's got good instincts, very technically sound player. What stood out most to me watching his highlight reel is how effective he is as a blitzer because he has such long arms. I mean, the first thing that stands out is he's not that hard to identify on the tape. Obviously, you watch huddle highlights and the arrow points to him and you see who he is. But he stands out because he's just so much taller than everybody else. I mean, the height and the length can be a real weapon in coverage. Now, is he as, explosive as an athlete as, say, a Nasir Wyatt coming off the edge? No. Or a Mateo? No. I don't think that he is. That's why he plays probably at the second level. But definitely a guy that I can see getting worked into the fold. And you can't teach length. You cannot teach length and height. And he's either 6'3.5" or 6'5". That's pretty stark difference there. Not really sure who's cry. I haven't met him in person and measured him myself, but I'll get right on it for you guys. But definitely a kind of unique body type with that sort of frame, whichever height is accurate, frankly, compared to the other backers that Oregon has. But yeah, pretty technically sound player, which you'd expect being the son of an NFL great and Oregon great like Haloti Ngata. And he's the second member of Oregon's 2027 recruiting class, which is indeed going to be a heavily discussed topic here on the show. Leave your thoughts and I just want to throw out as well, I'm always here for the legacy recruits. I'm a sucker for nostalgia, and not every single legacy recruit. Kai Wheaton's at Oregon State, but now you've got Achilles Smith Jr., you've got Sam Ngata as well. I think in addition to him being someone that could potentially contribute and be a good football player for the Ducks, it just kind of fosters that connection with the old-time fans. I bet the old-time fans appreciate a move like this a lot. But BYU, Cal, Michigan, Nebraska, pretty solid cadre of schools that were going after him. That's always a marker in my head for how good a guy really is or what his potential is. Who did you beat out? That's a good list of schools. Not the best that Oregon goes after, but certainly a guy that I think can become a starter one day. So leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. He also plays tight end. Maybe he could sprinkle in a little tight end work there. What does that room look like for 2026 and how do they get used? I'll talk about that next. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. And my Seahawks are in it. Down go the Rams. That is some dubs down kind of vibe, which Oregon basketball unfortunately couldn't deliver over the weekend. But this is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. As I record this show, FanDuel has got my beloved Seahawks minus 4.5 in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Gosh, I would take a Seahawks cover. However, it must be done. Whatever you think is happening, you can bet on it over at FanDuel. If you're a new customer, just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the football season's over, and there's no football until the fall. So, last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook sponsor of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And you're listening to the Locked On Ducks podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Ducks your first listen of the day. And thank you as well for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Ducks, which is compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you can get discounts on merchandise and other perks as well. And you can join the Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. So, go check it out. Become a Locked On Everydayer and join the Everydayer Club today. I'm a fan of Oregon's tight end room going into this season. There is a distinct possibility, because I did not have high expectations for Jamari Johnson going into this past year, I undergraded the room a little going into the season. There's a remote possibility. Definitive conclusions have not yet been drawn on my part, mostly because it might make me look bad, but that's okay. So, as I say, came across, if you want to submit a take for Spencer's Scale of Agreement, YouTube comments, direct messages, become a Locked On Ducks insider, link in the description below. Those are the ways. And if you become an insider, by the way, you get priority mailbag access and other perks too. So, this one about that very tight end room. The Meringer offense takes more deep shots, but also gets more targets to the tight ends. Kendra Harrison and Jamari Johnson both go for over 500 receiving yards and 5 or more touchdowns in 2026. Go Ducks. So it's kind of hard to imagine an Oregon offense where tight ends are more involved than they were this year. I'm pretty sure the total amount of receiving yardage production from this Oregon team was more than any other season in Ducks history. Someone can double check me on that. But Jamari Johnson had 32 catches for 510 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he was not Oregon's #1 tight end. Kenyon Sadiq, who finished the year as Oregon's second leading receiver, had more catches than anybody else, for what it's worth. That's something that comes up a lot amongst fans in these discussions. Sadiq didn't get the ball enough, and Decorey Moore didn't, and I think there's some validity to that. Sadiq also led the team in receiving touchdowns and receptions and was second in yards. So it's not as if they didn't know he was a good guy to throw the football to. Sadiq going 51 for 560 and 8 touchdowns, most touchdowns amongst the tight end of anybody in the country. At that position, he's going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Probably won't get past pick 14, 15. Maybe he could slide to 20. Maybe. But he's awesome. The good news is Drew Meringer has loaded up at this position well. And he's got to get his flowers for that. 2 years ago at this time, I don't think Meringer as a recruiter was held in as high of esteem as he is right now. And he has earned that increase in reputational perception. So 2 tight ends going for over 500 yards would be a repeat of this year, and the tight ends or the touchdowns to the tight ends a little bit more spread out. Now, the question that I have for this room is not who's tight end one. I know that's Jamari Johnson. He's got a great rapport with Dante Moore. I'd actually be willing to bet if he stays healthy, he goes over 510 yards and 3 touchdowns next year. 32 catches. I bet he goes over all of those totals. Quarterbacks like going to the guys who they know and are comfortable with. And that's a big reason why right now I'd say your top 2 pass catchers next year could very well be Jeremiah McLaughlin and Jamari Johnson. Decorey Moore is obviously going to be in that fold as well. But Kendra Harrison coming in and doing it as a true freshman, that'd be, I mean, it's not impossible. Guy's a physical freak. He's 6'7", athletic enough to play basketball. Boy, basketball needs a little bit of help right now. They need some juice. They do not have that. Lost to Washington over the weekend, which was expected. But anyway, bringing this back to the tight ends. Can a true freshman do what a two third-year tight ends actually just did? That's asking a lot. And then you've got Andrew Olish, who doesn't have a single stat recorded in his career, but was also a pretty highly regarded recruit. And you don't have Roger Saliapaga in the room or Vander Plug in that room anymore. Maybe somewhere deep down on the depth chart, you might still have A.J. Pugliano at tight end. I don't expect, if he is still there, I might have missed his transfer at some point, but I don't know that I did, actually. I don't think he would work himself into the fold. No, he's still listed on the Oregon roster there. So anyway, I think that what this tight end room is going to be is deep, versatile, and productive, because Johnson and Harrison probably have the most similar body types. And then Olish has a little bit more Kenyon Sadiq, Roger Saliapaga to him, where he's almost a wide receiver. And also Harrison is 6'7", and Jamari Johnson is 6'5". I mean, Kendra Harrison might put the pads on, line up on the field, and look like Darnell Washington, the Georgia tight end from a couple of years ago. So to bring this back to the SSA, that they both have over 500, I don't know if Kendra automatically is just ahead of Andrew Olish. He could be. That feels like a coin flip. So them both having 500-plus yards and 5 touchdowns, if you said Jamari Johnson and a tight end, actually, I don't know if that would change the take. Now, you do have a former tight ends coach who's still the tight ends coach as the offensive coordinator, so he might have a particular appreciation for that position and what you can get out of that group, the mismatches they create, and all of that good stuff. I think I'm going to stash this one at a 4.5, because I'm with you that more deep shots just have to be in the fold. It doesn't need to be a complete shift in philosophy for Oregon. It's just a couple more times they've got to be able, and the bulk of this, I almost think, falls on Dante Moore, but the coaching that he receives plays into it as well. He's got to just take the shots and let his guys go make plays. If you have a one-on-one down the field with Jeremiah McLaughlin or DeCorian Moore, throw the darn ball. Just throw it. Because I think a lot of Oregon fans will join me in ripping our collective hair out the next time we see a replay of there's a one-on-one with somebody like that and Dante Moore just doesn't let it rip or checks it down. That I think is one of the biggest areas of growth that Meringer is partially responsible for, without question, because he's got to give those opportunities and also coach Dante Moore unless Oregon hires a quarterback coach. But Meringer is obviously still going to be involved in those conversations. Is he's got to coach him to trust those shots down the field. But yeah, with the tight ends, like I'm with you on the more deep shots because of the personnel they'll have. But Harrison and Jamari Johnson both repeat what they did this year. I think Jamari Johnson, frankly, because of the ingrained relationship he's got with Dante Moore, I think he could very well have a huge advantage in getting the lion's share of the targets, whereas this year it was a pretty even distribution. Right? I mean, Sadiq caught 19 more passes, but only for 50 more yards, but did catch 5 more touchdowns. So, yeah, I think that Johnson already having that rapport with Dante Moore will set up for him to have a higher percentage of the tight end targets. I do expect the room, though, to still be pretty productive. And I don't think this is a crazy or wild statistical SSA. I just think Johnson is going to be pretty awesome, and Dante Moore already likes him. So give that one a 4.5. Not a bad number. Not a bad number. Just slightly below what I view as a coin flip there. Joel Klatt loves Oregon. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what is on the screen. And you know what? I was watching Sam Darnold slice and dice that Rams secondary. He had it working a Cooper Kupp, the former Ram, Jackson Smith and Jigba, to Rashid Shaheed, a running back, a tight end every now and then. He was spreading the ball around, really distributing the rock in excellent fashion. He had paid attention to every detail, which reminds me of Mazda. Because Mazda knows what it takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the court, off the field, in the film room. Something that I think we can all agree the Oregon coaching staff and players have to do a better job of in these playoff games. Dial in every detail. Give it the extra fire, that grit, and the I never quit mentality. That is what Mazda is delivering with their cars. They put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Joel Klatt released his way too early top 10 teams in college football for 2026. And he put Oregon at number 1 because he doesn't want us to have nice things. No preseason number 1 since I don't even know when has won the national championship. This year it was Texas. They went 10-3. They lost to Florida. I cannot believe they lost to Florida. They're a significantly better team. But they lost to Florida, and that's why they didn't make the college football playoff. Remember when we were having those debates? The playoff is staying at 12 teams. Thank goodness. I'm a fan of that. I might dive into this another day, but off the top of my head, 10-2 almost assuredly gets Oregon in. This year, with the schedule they had, I don't think 10-2 is getting them in. Said that going into the Washington game. You're probably out. You could be in, but you're probably out. And seeing how it all played out now, I don't think 10-2 Oregon would have been in over a 10-2 Notre Dame or 11-1 well, I don't know. The committee really didn't like BYU. Plus, BYU lost the Big 12 championship game. So, yeah, I'd have to think about that one a little bit more. But the reason I bring this up is, number 1, have I said before, national championship or bust? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Do I want Oregon to be the preseason number 1 team? No. No, absolutely not. I was just breaking down stats and little scheme and general discussion in the last segment when talking about the tight ends. I'm going to go into fan lore here and just point out that while internally and logically I understand how you could put Oregon as the number one team, Indiana lost a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and two or three great receivers to the NFL draft. I don't remember if Charlie Becker is back or not. They've reloaded in the portal, but that's not as proven as what Oregon is bringing back. I understand a team that was in the Final Four that's bringing back its starting quarterback, top two running backs, well, two of its top three running backs, a great tight end, an elite receiving core, should be a good O-line, top four defensive linemen. You bring in the number one safety in the portal. You bring back your stud true freshman and Brandon Finney at corner. Yeah, I get how someone could make that decision, but dude, it just, when I was in college, I played intramural softball. And guess what? Every time I took the field, stepped over the line, right over it. Wasn't even real chalk. We were playing on a turf field. Didn't matter. You just do. You just do. There is nothing logical or factual to what I am saying, and it doesn't necessarily change anything about Oregon's season. The temptation to put Oregon right on the train tracks, leaving Hype Station, are very understandable. The infrastructure is there. I'd like those thoughts to be kept private. Don't need Klatt's jinxing powers out there. I tell you what, because I've got a little jinxing power myself. Maybe I should pick Oregon to go 7-5. Gonna lose to Oklahoma State and Stillwater. Washington's gonna get them at Autzen. Ohio State on the road, lost by 30. I'm just gonna pick them all the way to the bottom, just so they'll rise to the top. I mean, my preseason national championship pick was Clemson because they actually had a lot of the same traits as Indiana. One just has a much better coaching staff. Clemson was really experienced, veteran quarterback, NFL guys on the roster, older head coach that's proven he can win. And Clemson flamed out, and Indiana went 16-0. So, yeah, I'm just let's roll it back here, Joel. How about a nice number preseason number 4? You know, or 8. Let's go 8. Give Lanning a little motivation and fuel for the locker room as if they don't have enough right now. So anyway, was that the most ridiculous segment I did? No, it's not. It's not the most ridiculous segment I've done. Was it top 5 this year? Yeah, probably. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And go Ducks.